with a unified definition for atheism? Come on up, Benjamin.
Hi, Darth. How are you?
I do be fine. What would you like to say, Benjamin?
Well, I grew up in a Christian environment, and I just, in reflecting on it, I just don't find it was particularly healthy. For me, it discouraged furthering my education. It was isolating in a variety of ways.
What
We
does
spent a
that
lot of
have to do?
times
What does that
praying,
what does that have to
and
do with you believing or not believing in God?
um, well, I just don't see any affirmative reason to believe in any of the 10,000 gods that have been invented over time.
Okay, okay. So read. Okay, so what you're doing is you're doing the classic bait and switch. You're moving from global atheism to local atheism. Global atheism is the position there are no gods. Local atheism is not global atheism in that it just simply says I do not accept the existence of local gods that are being presented. So I will ask you a very simple question. Do you believe that there is an eternal supreme being that is the creator of all things that are not himself? Do you
I,
positively
I
believe that?
don't. I don't.
Okay, good. Then you're an atheist. So how is it that God does not exist?
I just don't see any evidence. I mean, how
Okay,
is there not a
okay, all right,
teacup
all
that's
right. Okay,
orbiting
so
Jupiter, right? Like,
okay, well that you what you're doing is you are borrowing from Bertrand Russell. Do you realize that?
yeah, of course, I'm quoting him. I hope
Okay, that is
pretty
okay,
fairly.
but here's the problem. Okay, Bertrand Russell, as brilliant a philosopher he was, and he was a brilliant man, he made a major blunder when he offered teapotism, because a teapot would be basically an ordinary fact. A teapot orbiting Jupiter or any other planet for that matter does not represent the category of ultimacy. Okay, whereas God is definitionally within the category of what is transcendently ultimate. So
Okay, I understand
okay,
that
so
it's
let me
necessarily
finish.
ultimate. Go
Let
ahead.
me finish because look, I'm not trying to throw Bertrand Russell under the bus. I can have a great deal of respect for his brilliance as an American philosopher, but he still made a blunder here. Okay, and many other professional or philosophical degreed atheists make similar mistakes. So surely you would agree that God is not in the same category as a teapot orbiting. So what Russell was promoting was a kind of a sophisticated or a somewhat sophisticated lacktheism. Well, I'm just simply I'm unconvinced. I don't see a reason to believe in it, and since I don't see a reason to believe in it, I'm justified in presuming that it doesn't exist. That's called the presumption of atheism. Are you familiar with that?
I accept the construct.
No, you need to
You
focus.
explained it well.
Okay, listen, I know, but you need to focus on what I'm saying to you. Do you understand that's what the position is? Okay, but you see,
Yeah,
that is
that makes
not
sense now.
that is lacktheism. That is not classical
Yeah.
atheism. Okay, so
Oh, if you like, sure.
what atheists will do, they will proclaim themselves an atheist because they know what that single word in the English language means, but they want to redefine it for the purposes of insulating themselves from having to defend what they really believe. Now, either you are going to affirm that God exists as eternal creator, you will deny that God exists, or you might try to claim that you are suspending judgment. Bertrand Russell was basically trying in a very clever analogy with the teapot orbiting Jupiter, was basically claiming that he was suspending judgment or that he was justified in presuming God doesn't exist, right? But here's the problem. When we talk about God, we're talking about a model of reality. Do you agree with that?
I do, but I think that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and I just don't think
Okay.
that
All right.
standard
Thank
has been
you.
met.
Thank you. That's it. That's another atheist cliche. Okay. So is it, if I say to you that all the facts in the world universally derive and depend upon God, Is that an extraordinary claim that requires extraordinary evidence?
It does feel extraordinary.
Is that a yes?
Yeah,
Okay. If I tell you that all facts in the world do not universally derive and depend upon God, is that an extraordinary claim?
it doesn't seem extraordinary to me.
No, it is. Okay. Both of them are declarations of universal. If one is extraordinary, then so is the other, because they're both statements of universality. Okay, that either all facts derive and depend upon X or not. Okay. Now, if we say that X is that which is
I think
ultimate.
this
Let,
construction
let,
is
let, let me let, no, let me
not as
finish because I'm spot on accurate with you.
Aristotelian as you think
What
it
I what
is.
I'm
I
about
need
to
a
lay
minute.
out for you cannot be refuted. Listen carefully, okay? When we talk about God, God is a proposition. It is also a worldview. Okay, so when we talk about God, God is not merely an entity to be believed in, but God is a worldview where God is the creator, and then there is his creation where everything universally derives and depends upon him. So we could simplify that proposition by saying we can represent God by X. Okay, so we could say all all facts universally derive and depend upon X. Now, what is the converse of that, or the negation of that? Then it would be all facts universally
All
do not
facts do
do
not
do not derive
universally.
from X. Okay, so
Exactly.
if okay, so the proposition then, both the affirmation and the denial of the proposition are extraordinary claims. Both of them.
Well, I just don't think that's true.
Okay, well then then
I
then
think
you're
there's an
just then
asymmetry here.
no, there's no okay. There's an asymmetry in the sense that they are antithetical to each other. One is the negation of the other. Do you understand that the God versus not God are both universal declarations?
But Darth, so if I understand this correctly,
Look,
you're saying that
listen
if
to
I
me.
were to
You need to
claim, no,
focus. Listen to me.
I am
You need to
focused,
focus. No,
entirely
listen.
focused.
Stop over talking me. The reason why I cut you off is because I'm seeing a pattern of behavior here that you're not
There's
focusing
no
clearly on what
behavior.
I'm saying. Please stop
I'm
over
with you, Darth.
talking me. Okay. You need to focus on what I'm saying to you. Okay. If we invoke God, we are invoking what is called the creator creature distinction. And what that entails is all facts that are not God universally derived from God. And we can represent God as X. So God X would be that which is ultimate. Okay. Now, one's position will be that all facts universally derive and depend upon X, okay, the ultimate,
Yeah.
or something else that's ultimate or not. Okay? So your position is that all facts universally derive on something else that is ultimate, or your position will be that all facts universally do not derive from anything that's ultimate.
Well,
So
I think what you're saying is transcendentalism or not transcendentalism.
for clarification purposes, in your not God world, is it your position that all facts do not universally derive upon God, and that it's something else that's ultimate?
Well, you're tying two claims together there.
Okay, I'd like an answer to my question.
Well, but it's not Aristotelian
You
if you
see
tie two
what you see
claims
what you're
together.
doing. What you are doing classically is what unbelievers do every single day when I talk with them on Clubhouse. You are being completely evasive. Okay, now I'm asking you
You're just tying two
straightforward
claims together.
questions.
It's
Okay,
not about
listen,
evasion.
listen to me. If you persist, if you persist in being evasive, I will kick you off the stage.
That's fine, Darth. It's an
I do not
expectation, not a
mind
threat.
you. Okay, I do not. No, I'm explaining to you what the rules are.
Yeah, I
Okay,
get it, Darth.
good. Now, when you say that everything, when we make the stipulation of the existence of God, I'm sure that you agree that the affirmation or assertion of God is the equivalent of saying all things that exist universally derive from God. So the
Agreed.
affirmation of the God world is a declaration of universality.
Agreed.
Good. Now, the not God world is equally a stipulation of universality. So are you saying that the stipulation of universality, okay, all facts
No,
deriving from
because
God,
the
would you not?
Aristotelian
Okay, listen. If you
converse here
okay,
is
if you cut
non-universality.
me off again, I'm kicking you off the stage. Last warning.
Darth, I love you.
Okay, goodbye. See you later, clown. Okay, see, this is what they can't do. They refuse. They stiff-necked and steadfastly refuse to clearly focus on what I'm saying to them and respond to what I'm saying. But rather than respond, he pretends to respond, but he's just throwing in verbiage to throw a monkey wrench into the gears. Okay? So when he says extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, this is just simply, a Carl Saganism, which is also deployed by Christopher Hitchens. Now, if the stipulation of God is an extraordinary claim, the God world, then the not God world is also an extraordinary claim. Okay, you can't have your cake and eat it too, right? Or I guess the correct way of putting it is you can't eat your cake and have it too, which is technically the correct historical way of saying it. But nonetheless, I digress. The bottom line here, this is what we see, a pattern of behavior every single day. Atheists refuse, they stiff-necked and steadfastly refuse to do a basic analysis of what their position entails. They would rather than just spew their cliches and slogans. The fact of the matter is, if the invocation of God is an extraordinary claim, then so is not God, right? Now, the reason why people like that clown and others do not want to conceptualize that they're not God world, they don't want to categorize it as an extraordinary or an extraordinary claim, is because they accept it as true, right? So what he's just simply doing is he's peddling clicheism that came from Carl Sagan. Carl Sagan's not a good atheist to appeal to. He might have been a good astronomer. He was a fascinating guy to listen to, but he was pathetically bad in his atheism. And in fact, he even lied about being an atheist. He said he wasn't an atheist when he clearly was. So the fact is, any statement of universality is an extraordinary claim. Okay, it's extraordinary. Okay, where do we get? How should I put this? If any statement of universality is an extraordinary claim. Why? Because it's not an ordinary claim. Because we don't actually have a posteriori encounters or experience with universality. So any statement of universality is an extraordinary claim. So when they say that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, this too then applies to the not God world as well as to the God world. But you see, as usual, atheists and unbelievers do not want to follow their own standards. They don't want to follow their own criterion of belief. So they just throw this out as a cliche, right? And this is why when I confronted him with his cliche, he just wanted to backpedal from it. So if the affirmation of God is a universal claim, and that's extraordinary, then the universal claim of not God, or that all facts can be invoked as standalone without reference to the necessity of God, that too is an extraordinary claim. Because if it's not an extraordinary claim, then how is it an ordinary claim? To say that all facts ultimately do not derive from God. How is that an ordinary claim? So if it's not an ordinary claim, then it's going to be an extraordinary claim. Or as the British say, extraordinary. So you see, I've heard these atheist cliches, slogans, platitudes over and over and over again, and I'm prepared for that. And then when you confront these people with it, they just start to throw other cliches. He talked about the teapot. I demonstrated to him that Bertrand Russell, peace be upon him, made a blunder there, because God is it is to compare God to an invisible teapot, or a visible teapot for that matter, orbiting Jupiter, is a category error, right? Because not everything derives and depends upon that teapot, right? This is okay. Bertrand Russell's comparison to believing God to a teapot orbiting Jupiter is a little bit less stupid sounding. Okay, it has a little more air of philosophical sophistication than somebody talking about, well, believing a God is like believing in leprechauns or Santa Claus, right? It's a little bit more sophisticated presentation of the same stupid idea, right? Not that I'm any smarter than Bertrand Russell, by no means, no. But they want to sit there and going, oh, extraordinary claims. Oh, good. Well, the not God world is an extraordinary